Hello folks, I am back, and as promised, this is going to be my shooting review of the PDP 5-inch. And what I'm going to tell you about this is I really enjoyed shooting this firearm. And there's a couple things I'm going to let you know, the couple things that might be a negative to some people, and something that I believe can be corrected if trained around it. Let's start by letting the YouTube gods know that this is an empty firearm and we're all clear. And here you go. The firearm is clear. Okay, let's get right down to it. One of the things I liked about shooting this firearm is how easy it is to get right back on target. Once you fire that round, the sight picture comes back immediately. As you see, I'm not using a red dot, but however, I believe with this sight setup and how it recoils back, especially when the slide reciprocates back. When the slide goes back, it pops right back. It's kind of different. It reminds me of a 1911, the way a 1911 does that push when the slide comes back. So that's what I think this does. It kind of goes back and then goes forward. I have mentioned before in the other impressions video about I gave an example of the Prodigy, the Springfield Prodigy, where the slide seems to be moving kind of slow, and it's kind of like that guy ka-chunk backing. When the slide comes back and then goes forward, it seems like it's slower, and this is why people prefer the 4-inch model of that particular firearm. Well, with this, it's a little different because to me, because of the weight of this slide, it just goes back like a 1911 and then goes forward. But a lot of people were questioning whether it be flippy or not. As you see, I have a flashlight on this. I've shot this with the flashlight only. I never shot it without the flashlight. But in the previous models that I did shoot in the past, I did not have a flashlight on it, and still, to me, it was not flippy. Now on my 4.5-inch version of this, it tends to be a little bit flippy, but that's something that whether you don't mind it or not, but in either case, flippy or not, it gets right back on target with a nice sight picture. And you can see other videos on that where the 4.5-inch seems to be a little flippy, but gets right back on target and is also very accurate. And I could say the same about this. This firearm is very accurate. One of the other things is, while shooting this, I had one thing I believe that was pretty much my issue, my fault. I felt a little pinching, and a lot of people talk about that with Glocks, where you have the safety dingus that you see right here, whether it pinches the finger during firing. I've been used to, lately I've been shooting a lot of flat face triggers like the 320 Legions, etc. And I've been so used to shooting flat face triggers that I leave a little space out right in here. So that's the way I shoot a flat face. But when I shoot it that way, if you can tell, my finger is pretty much a little bit far over. So I would get a pinching effect. So I've noticed that, and I said, maybe it's something I'm doing wrong, or maybe it's because of this particular model. The moment I put my finger back in, it seemed like the safety dingus went totally flat, and I did not have that issue anymore. So that's what happens, folks, when you have quite a few firearms. Sometimes you have to, there are little tricks with different firearms. That's why some people prefer to shoot only one particular firearm and call that their training regimen, which makes perfect sense. So once I put my finger in the proper placement, I did not have that pinching experience. One of the other things that concerns a lot of people with the PDP, and not only the PDP, even with the HK VP9s, is that when you get a high grip, a lot of times when you get a high grip and you're trying to hold thumbs forward. Now notice where my thumb is right here. Some people will accidentally, as they get a high grip, they're holding down on that slide release or slide lock. So when that last round is shot, and then the slide is supposed to lock back. The problem is that they're holding so tight that the slide never catches on the lock. So that can be a training issue. But in my case, I was doing something a little different. The way I grip is I like to have the fat of my palm on my support hand right right in tuned right there. Now you notice if you look where the fat of my palm is right here, the fat of the palm right there was preventing it from slide lock. So it wasn't actually my thumb. It was how I usually grip certain firearms. I will light that fat right in between there, and it stopped the slide from being locked back. So I had to make a little bit of adjustment. So I'm shooting a little bit more like this. So I'm avoiding the thumb from touching it by right here. Let me, like right here, I'm more or less using my thumb holding right here, and my thumb may be curved or it may not be. So I had to make that adjustment so I won't be like this. I'm a little bit like that. So you see how that is right here, blocking right there. So now I'm like this. So I had to really learn that instead of holding that there. So at first I thought it was a magazine issue, but it was not. It was basically my grip was so high. So I had to consciously think about that. And how I can remember how to do it is a lot of people have like stippling work on their Glocks or whatnot to have their thumb placement, or on some other firearms they have like what they call like a gas pedal. Well, I use the marking right here as my gas pedal, and what I do is I pretty much use this like a gas pedal. So that's how I gauge where the fat right here is, because I was a little bit too high. So I kind of gauge it like that and like this. I've noticed that I've never had that issue with the 4.5 inch. For some reason, I have that issue. And if you notice the way my hand is curved, if you could see like under here, but it's kind of curved a little bit different. But all in all, this is the kind of grip that works for me. It might not work for others, but this is the kind of grip it works for me, and it pretty much keeps me on target. I can pretty much rapid fire this. And my version of rapid fire, I was talking to a friend of mine, and what my version is a 3-shot burst or 5-shot burst. I don't do that excessive rapid fire like some people do. I just do the 3 or 5-shot burst. That was the way I was trained for each target, 3 to 5. So just to give you an idea on what the targeting looked like. So on the targeting here, I had to fold this target down because I wasn't going to get this fully in. So on my targeting, I was shooting a maximum up to 15 rounds. I did my regular sight in, which my regular sight in for a firearm with iron sights. I try to sight in to see where the bullet's going to hit at 7 yards. So right now this is 15 yards. I didn't stretch it out to 25 like I normally do because I didn't have a lot of time, but this is it right here. Right there. And I kept it. My goal is to keep it within the 9 ring. That's my goal. But I think a lot of these shots down here was due to what I was telling you earlier about my finger placement and also changing my grip a little bit. So that's why they appear a little lower. But as always, the goal is always to try to stay within the red zone or bullseye mark. So I will be experimenting more, stretching this out to 15 yards, and I do have a really good matchup for a versus video. So I think you're going to enjoy that because both of those lengths on there are going to be 5 inches on another striker firearm. So I'm going to do that in the future. One of the other things I want to bring to attention, I've been looking online about about the PDP. Some people say it's not a good duty weapon, and some people say it is a good duty weapon. There was an issue outside of the plate issue. There was an issue about whether if you jab this into someone and the slide goes back, of course, when you pull the trigger, it's not going to engage or fire. And then they said with the other firearms on the market, possibly Glock or other firearms, that once it goes back into battery, you can pull the trigger and then it'll be right. So, for example, with this, on this particular model, it moves up, and then you pull back, and then there's a dead trigger. So that is one of the concerns that some people had. Now, I think this particular one might be the older version that first came out. Maybe this version I have, it might be back stock. But the newer version, they claim that when it goes back and you pull the trigger and you get a dead trigger. Let me explain that again. You get a dead trigger here, but then later on when you release, it will fire. They said that was the newer version or the second gen of that, of the PDP. Well, the new versions don't have that issue. For me, put a light on it. And that way, if you have to jab, the light's right there, and it'll still fire. Okay. So, like I said, you'll see a versus video with this, and you're going to see more of this in some videos I plan to do some training on. I think the 5-inch PDP doesn't get a lot of love, but if you like a long barrel and you on your firearms and you want something with a little bit higher velocity, I think the PDP is a good choice to go to. With that said, happy shooting, stay safe, #2A, and list your comments.